Hi guys, welcome back to 3 Under 3. Today I'm going to be doing a video in honor of my little munchkin Emilia. Today, actually this weekend, marks the 1-year anniversary of us finding out about her condition. For those of you who don't know already, Emilia was diagnosed 1 year ago today, April 27th, 2018, with bilateral retinoblastoma. I'm gonna kind of do this as probably a 2, maybe 3-part series because I just feel like there's so much to talk about and so much to say. I want to share with you our journey through her treatment, talk about how she's done, talk about how we found out that she had it, kind of increase awareness for some of the symptoms, signs, things to look for. And then I also want to talk about how she's doing now because we are 1 year into treatment. It is, unfortunately for her, because hers is the genetic type, it's bilateral, it is a lifelong battle. So it's not something that there's any end to at this point, but it's definitely, it's going in a good direction right now. So we're really excited about that. And yeah, so I thought that we would talk about all those different aspects of it. So today I'm going to take you through what retinoblastoma is, how it's diagnosed, things you can look for in your kids, and kind of the first steps. So how we found out, how Emilia was diagnosed, and what the first little bit of treatment looked like for us. So with that, let's get started. When Emilia was born, they handed me and my husband a 6-pound, 0-ounce little bundle of joy. And I just distinctly remember, obviously anyone who's a parent knows that feeling when you get to hold your baby for the first time. You felt them kicking, you felt them moving, and they hand you a baby and they say to you, they hold them up and they say, this is a perfectly healthy baby girl, baby boy, whatever you have. And there's just this feeling of love like you've never felt before. I can't describe it. I can't put it into words, but just holding her for the first time was the most important moment in my life to date, I think, because she's still my only baby. So it's definitely the most important moment in my life as of yet. And hearing them say that she was perfectly healthy and that she was beautiful and perfect, it was just amazing. From that moment on, she went to every one of her checkups. At every checkup, she was perfect. She never dropped weight. She never had issues with feeding. She never had any allergies. She never had a reaction to a vaccine. She never had a cold. She never really even had a fever. I think she got a little bit of a cough. I thought it was croup. I think it was croup. They ended up saying it was croup when she was about 14 months old. But prior to that, like, she was perfectly healthy. She went to all of her checkups, they do 48 hours, 7 days, 14 days, a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, 15 months. And she checked out perfectly. So everything was always a-okay with baby Emilia. She met all of her milestones. So she sat up when she should sit up. She never really crawled. She did a bit of like an army crawl where she would just shuffle on her belly, but she got really quick at it. So we didn't worry about it. And she was table walking and kind of moving around by the time she was, I'd say, 10 months. The only thing that, looking back now, I can say was a bit odd, and I think we noticed it at the time, but we brushed it off as something else, is that she table walked for a really long time. So she was able to pull herself up and walk around a table or a couch or any other item by about 10 and a half months. It was shortly before Christmas that she was doing that, but she wouldn't let go. She wasn't adventurous. She wasn't, my mom and I both always described her as just being a very cautious kid. She was very careful, and she never got, like, to this day, even when she ended up going through chemo, no bumps, no bruises. Like, she's never had a bruise. She's never scraped her knee. She was just so cautious. So never moving from one item to another and falling in between. Whereas a lot of kids are just very careless. They're brave, and you have to watch them because they'll fall and they'll smack their head on the counter or on the floor or a chair or whatever it may be. She was never like that. She was very, very cautious. And she would never take a step without having something to hold on to. So we just chalked it up to her being a cautious kid, and she was just careful. It wasn't that she couldn't move. It wasn't that she didn't walk. She talked, she walked, she did everything. She was just very cautious about it. And why would that cause concern? She's just a cautious kid. She's not a kid that gets bumps and bruises. That's a good thing, right? And then, so at her first birthday, she, again, like I said, she could take a step, but it was one finger, and she just wanted to hold it, and she would step around, no problem. And again, kids don't have to walk until around 18 months. If they're not walking by 18 months, then there's a little bit of like, what's going on there? But we weren't concerned. It was around March after her first birthday when my mom approached me and kind of just had a few questions for me about her. And I had noticed what my mom was saying, but again, I hadn't thought too much into it. I really just thought it had more to do with where she was at developmentally and her age than anything. So what my mom noticed was Emilia, when you were talking to her, she would respond, she would make noises, she would say words, she would point to things that she wanted. But if you were to look at her in her face and talk to her, she would do this. And she would never look directly at you. She was always looking. I'm trying to think which side it was. If I was looking at her face, she would turn to my left. So she was always looking to the left of my face all the time. And I couldn't figure out why it was. I was a little bit like, is she just playing games? Because as I would move, she would move. So it was weird. And my mom said, maybe she has a lazy eye. Either she's autistic or she has a lazy eye. She's intentionally not looking at you, or her eye just, when she tries to focus, it looks like she's looking somewhere else because, you know. And my younger brother, I remember, because I'm 11 years older than him, I remember him as a kid having a really lazy eye, to the point where if he was looking off in the distance, his eye would just totally drift off. So to me, I remember him having to wear a patch a little bit, but it corrected itself and it wasn't a big deal. So that was what I thought it was. And my mom said, you should just take her in and have them look at it, because the sooner that they catch a lazy eye, the sooner they can fix it. They'll start patching her younger and it'll just have a better outcome for her. So that's what we did. We booked an appointment with a pediatric ophthalmologist. Was it not? No, optometrist. So it's just the person that you go to have your, just your general eyes looked at and to get a prescription for your glasses. So they're not actually a doctor before they specialize. They're just specialized in prescriptions of glasses and knowing like what's normal in an eye. That's it. So they took her in about 2 weeks later. They had an opening, so we went, and she was pretty cooperative, I guess. They had to put the drops in because they said if it is a lazy eye, we want to be able to see. We're going to do like a full eye health check too. So that was not fun, because as anybody knows, had their eyes checked, those drops sting a bit and they just make you feel uncomfortable and you get a headache because your eyes are open and you're so sensitive to the light. But she did pretty well. And we went in and we met with the doctor, and he was really great. He put on some shows for her and he shone a really bright light in her face, and he was kind of wanting her to look at the light. And most kids are like a fly to light, and they're like, oh, there it is, there it is. And they look and they watch the light, and she wouldn't look at the light. And so he was a little bit concerned. We did end up having to hold her head. so that he could just kind of open the eye and look in it. And that was a little bit traumatic for me as mom, because it was the first time that I'd ever gone to a doctor's appointment of some sort and had to physically restrain my child in order to get them to be able to see what they needed to see. So he did that, and he put on the baby shark video on an iPad, and he was showing it to her. And I had always noticed that Emilia never watched TV. She never was interested in television. She never wanted an iPad. And this was the first time that I was alarmed by the fact that she didn't want an iPad, because he seemed to be a little bit alarmed that she didn't want it. He said that he had a daughter the same age, or son the same age, I can't remember, and that his kid was obsessed, and that most kids are obsessed with the iPad. Like, they just zone right in and that's it. And Emilia never had any interest in it. So he said, okay, I'm just gonna like look things over. If you guys want to go sit out in the waiting room and just give her a little break, because she could tell she was getting agitated. She just wasn't cooperating. So we went and we waited. And of course, I started Googling things. You know, I'm like, lazy eye, like problems that can happen. And nothing was really coming up. So we went back into the room about 10 minutes later, and he said he just wanted to look again. And I don't think he really wanted to look again. I think he just wanted to mentally prepare himself to tell us what he was going to tell us. He was really great about not scaring us, but you could tell he was uncomfortable. I think in his entire career, he'll probably see one, maybe two kids like Emilia. So it must have been scary for him. I feel like he was probably doing some checking in his books to make sure that he was right before bringing us back into the room. He let us know that he saw a white, something white in the back of her right eye, and that he was not specialized to know what it was. All he was trained in was what a healthy eye looks like and how to prescribe prescription eyewear to a person that needs it. That's all he knew. He didn't know anything about diseases of the eye or what was not normal, how far from normal it was, what the outcome would be. He said, I can't give you any information about any of that. He's like, so I'm going to refer you. You're going to go see the on-call ophthalmologist for all of Hamilton today. And that was kind of when, in my head, I knew that it was bad, because generally speaking, if you're going to see a specialist, you're waiting a few months. At least here in Canada, you're waiting. But when they make it a priority that you will be seeing that specialist that day, that was when I kind of started to get upset and freak out and hyperventilate a little bit, like, okay, what's going on here? Like, this is obviously something that you feel is very serious, because you're pushing us along very quickly. So at this point, I called my work, because I was supposed to go in that afternoon to work, and I obviously wasn't going. So I called them and I said, I need to take an emergency day, and they were amazing. Yeah, no problem, no questions asked. See you tomorrow. Fine. I called my husband and I let him know, and it was really hard for me to talk on the phone because I was very upset at the time. But he said, okay, like, I'll leave work. I was like, yeah, you need to leave work. You need to meet me at my mom's. The doctor that we're going to see is right around the corner from her house. So if you could just meet me there, we're going to go there now. So we went, we left, we put Emilia in the car, got her something for lunch, and then went to see Dr. Fava, was the name of the ophthalmologist who we saw. He had a lot of patients there that day, so we had to wait quite some time, but it was worth it, obviously. So we waited and waited, and finally we saw him, and I have very bittersweet feelings towards this man, because he was such a sweet man. He was so wonderful, but he gave me some of the worst news that I've ever gotten in my life. So it's very bittersweet. He took a look at Emilia'S eyes. He looked at her right, and he kind of sat back, and you could tell he was, you know, when you get a vibe from somebody, like, it's not good. It's not great. This is not what I want to see. And then he took a look at her left, and I came into this appointment having had the optometrist tell me that there was something in her right eye, that there was nothing in her left, just her right. And he looked in her left and he sat back, and in the nicest, most professional, most calm way possible, he looked at me, and he knew I was mom. And at the time, my mom and I think my dad was there, and then Joey, Emilia, my husband, was there. And he said, I hope that I'm not right. I hope that I'm not, but I'm pretty sure that I am. Emilia has what looks like bilateral retinoblastoma. It is present in both of her eyes, and it is very advanced. Sorry, I get upset when I talk about this. And I just remember sitting there, and I had done a little bit when the first doctor told us there was something white. I started looking up diseases of the eye, and I came across that, and it was basically like on the list of things, like least significant to most significant, it was like the most significant thing that she could have. And that would be like unilateral, which is when it's in just one eye. That was really not good. And so when he said bilateral and that it was in both eyes, I knew that was really bad. And he just gave me a minute, and I asked him, like, can you put that into words for everyone else here who hasn't already Googled it? And he basically just turned and said that she has cancer in both of her eyes, and it's advanced. I hope that I'm wrong. I haven't seen this very much. It's very rare. You're going to be referred to sick kids. I know the person who's the head of the retinoblastoma team there, and she is phenomenal, and you will see her in the next day or two. I'm going to call her as soon as you leave, but just be prepared that you're going to be going to sick kids in Toronto. Luckily, they're based out of Toronto for all of Canada. And yeah, that was basically all he could tell me. I asked him, I said, how bad are the tumors? And he said, they're pretty bad. They look like they're D to E in both eyes. And I asked him, okay, so like, what's that mean? Because I obviously don't know anything at this point. And he said, well, it goes from A to E. So A being very small, easily treatable, good outcome, and E being like the eye is not salvageable. So in both of her eyes, she presented with D to E tumors. And I asked him, like, well, if they respond, like, will she ever be able, like, what can she see? Like, what? And he basically looked at me and told me that right now she was basically blind. So I had no idea, but she was essentially blind a year ago. She couldn't see anything other than like peripheral. So if you put your hands directly in front of the middle of your vision and don't look to the side, just continue to look straight and see what you can see without moving to the side, with just continuing to look straight. What you see, that's what she could see, which is essentially nothing, which is why she was always looking off to the side of our faces, because that was the only way that she could see us. So yeah, that was finding out. I went home and immediately, like, I bawled my eyes out, obviously. And I think that was the only time that I've actually cried since finding all of this out, because I looked around at myself and my family, and I just remember thinking, everybody else is crying. Like, who's doing research and who's fighting for her? Because like this is a big deal. We have to pull it together. Like, this is not, So I had a good cry, and then I started doing some research and looking everything up and trying to familiarize myself as much as I could with retinoblastoma. And luckily for us, it is a highly treatable cancer in that I mean, the treatments are not always ideal. They're not always what you want to do. For the longest time, enucleation, which is removal of the eye totally, was the best and most effective treatment in terms of curing the disease. But as I'll talk about later, we didn't end up having to go that route with Emilia, which is amazing, because obviously if you remove the eye, you can't see out of it anymore. It's gone. And there are some very, very unfortunate kids who end up needing both eyes removed, and then they are obviously completely blind forever. So we didn't have to go that route, but that was my biggest fear, was that we would have to do that. Yeah, so we went home and we started getting everything organized, and I was on the phone all night harassing poor Dr. Fava, like, have you heard from Dr. Galley? Have you heard from her? Have you heard from her? When is our appointment? Like, when are we going to see her? Like, I need to know. I'm totally type A. Like, I need to know when I'm seeing the specialist about this, because I need to get it dealt with. And I was actually on my way home that evening from my parents' house that I got a call from Dr. Galley herself. She was actually on her way. She was at the airport flying to Hawaii for a conference about, like, a worldwide conference on retinoblastoma. And she took the time to phone me and talk to me. Because for those of you who don't know, there's only about 23 children every year in Canada that are diagnosed with retinoblastoma. And most of those cases are unilateral, meaning that it's only in one eye. Spontaneous bilateral cases like Emilia make about 20% of those 23 kids per year. So you're looking at maybe 4 to 5 kids a year in Canada that are diagnosed with what she had. So they take it very seriously, and you know, you get really, really fantastic care, because there just aren't very many people that have it. So when you do, there's not a long wait. Thank God. Like, thank God there's no wait, because yeah, I couldn't have waited. So she called and she said that Dr. Fava had taken a couple of pictures and he sent them over along with his report of what he saw, and that she would need to see Emilia herself, or she would need her team at Sick Kids to see Emilia and take pictures there in order for her to make a final absolute diagnosis. But she said that based on everything that she knew thus far of Emilia's case, that she was highly confident that she did in fact have bilateral retinoblastoma, and she was staging at a D in the left eye and a D to E in the right eye. And she said that she would see me in a week, because we would be at Sick Kids pretty much every day for the next week, getting different tests done and starting treatment. And I'll never forget when she said to me, because I asked her, I said, so what is the outlook for a patient like Emilia? I mean, as a mom, that's what you want to know. You want to know, like, is my kid gonna survive? Is my kid gonna see, you know, like, what's her life gonna look like? Because I'm her mom and I want her to have everything. And what is that gonna look like for her? And she said to me that I needed to prepare myself for the very real possibility that Emilia would likely not always have 2 eyes, and she may not always have both eyes. She might end up losing both. It was a very real possibility, and that the priority at this point was to save her life. So she was very far along, and they didn't really know what was going to happen. Sorry guys, I just had to like a little break there. It's very emotional. So we went to Sick Kids the next day, and I won't get into the details of everything that they do to test. I will let you know that they did some pretty thorough eye exams. They did an ultrasound of both eyes. They put her out to insert a port, which is like a ball that goes under the skin with a tube that goes into a main artery in the neck, so that they can do chemo rather than having to use an IV in the hand. So that was a surgery. She still has a little scar, and the port is actually still in there a year later, because we are not out of the woods yet. Like I said in the beginning, it's a long battle. So So we still are active. She still does actively have cancer. I get that question a lot. It's still there. It's not gone. She's doing really well, but yeah, so her port is still there. They did an MRI to check her brain, because in some rare cases or in advanced cases like Emilia'S, it can go to the pineal gland in the brain, which is a tiny, tiny little gland literally located right in the center of your head. And that would be called, it's called like the third eye, or pineoblastoma. So they wanted to rule that out with an MRI. And this all happened within like 3 days. So I think by like May 2nd, we had all of these tests done, and they were talking, we met with the oncology team to talk about the type of chemotherapy that Emilia would be going through. And then finally, I want to say May 4th or May 5th, we started her first round of chemo. I'm going to talk about chemo and everything that goes along with that in another video, because this one's already getting to be pretty long. There's a lot to say. What I do want to say at the end of this video is that we couldn't have done this as a family without all of the support that we've received. It has been the hardest year of our lives. I know that anybody who's been through having someone that they care for or that is super close to them go through cancer, like you have an idea as to what it's like. But anybody who hasn't, like, you know, we get questions all the time, like, or people that have said to us, family, friends even, that have said, oh, she's gonna be fine. Like, she's gonna be fine. It's not a big deal. People don't have a clue. Like, they really don't. I think there's only 5 people in the world right now, in my world, that actually know what it's like. And that's Emilia, sorry, 6, Emilia, myself and my husband, my mom, because she has been to every single appointment with me, even when Joey can't come because he has to work, because I had to take 8 months off, so he had to go to work. She was there every time. My dad, because he came to a lot of appointments with us, and my sister, because she actually took 2 weeks off when Emilia was first diagnosed and came to the hospital and was the person holding Emilia down with me in those first days, so that they could do ultrasounds of her eyes and whatnot. Like, nobody else understands. To everybody else, it's not a big deal, but it literally has changed who I am as a person. I know it's changed my husband. Our life will never be the same. The type of cancer that she has is genetic. So she actually has a mutation in the RB1 gene, which is a tumor suppressor. So she will forever be at risk for her entire life to get a secondary cancer at different points in her life. She's at higher risk for certain ones. And basically what it works out to is she has a 25% chance of getting a secondary cancer. Whereas most of us walking around, we don't have, you know, we have like a 1%, maybe less than that chance of getting cancer until you're 60 years old. And then everybody ends up getting cancer eventually if you live long enough. But for her, her chance is 25% for the rest of her life. And then it obviously will increase as well once she becomes older, like over 60. But yeah, until she's 5, we have to watch out for brain tumors. From the time she's 8 until she's about 17, we have to watch out for osteosarcoma bone tumors. In her 20s and 30s, she has to watch out for skin cancers. And then in her 30s, 40s, she has to watch out for soft tissue tumors and sarcomas. So it's never ending for her. So everybody that always is asking me, oh, she's fine, like she's in remission, right? And I kind of smile, because I don't think they mean it that way, but it's really hard to sit there and say, no, actually she still has cancer and we might still have to go back on chemo and we're not done. And every appointment is stressful, because every time we go, they could say, oh, it's flaring up again. We have to do the whole thing all over again. So with that, I'm going to cut this one short because we're at 31 minutes and that's super long. But yeah, that's a basic diagnosis to beginning of treatment and kind of overview of Emilia'S condition. I will, like I said, my next video will be talking about what it was like, life with chemo, and then some of the treatments that she's received after, because she was so blessed and was one of only, I think, 3 or 4 kids in all of Canada to receive a special procedure back in September. And it totally changed her outlook and how things have gone since, which was amazing. And then my last video, I'll talk about how she's doing now and show you guys some videos of her, and hopefully I can scrounge up some of the video or the pictures that they took at her first appointments versus what her eyes are looking like now, because they do take pictures every time and show them to us so we can see the progress that she's made. So yes, thank you so much to everybody for tuning in. If you stuck through this whole video, God bless you. You're so sweet. It has been a really rough year for our family, but we made it through, and only a lifetime more to go. And she's gonna do awesome. She is gonna be the superstar that she is and be one of those 25% or one of the 75% who never gets another cancer. She's gonna astound us all. I already know. So thanks again, guys. Hope to see you back again next week for part 2. And yeah, take care.